Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex.
And I'm quite happy at the moment.
And that is because today we are reviewing the second of the secret anniversary specials, Wild Blue Yonder.
Yeah.
This is the episode that we knew the least about going in. And I think that,
Mm.
well, it's certainly by design. And Russell T Davies has since come out and said why, acknowledging the fact that not revealing anything opened up to the possibility of people speculating there were going to be multiple doctors in this.
Mm. Which
Um,
technically there are, but
I mean, so yeah, technically, I did. Last week, I saw a rumor that the villains of this episode are going to be evil versions of the 11th and 12th
yeah,
Doctors,
I saw that
sort of
too.
manifested by the TARDIS or wherever they were.
Mm.
And I never take stock in stuff like that. But the closer we got to the air date, with as little information as we had, the more I kept like in the back of my mind going, "Oh, maybe."
Mm.
But obviously not,
No.
because what we instead get is an episode that feels like a combination of Listen, Midnight, and The Rebel Flesh.
Yeah.
And it's the best parts of all of those episodes, even though The Rebel Flesh is an episode which I despise with all my being. This episode I adore.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Like in terms of the caliber of writing, and certainly consistency, um, this is kind of what I wanted from the Star Beast. Um, yeah.
Well,
Like,
I think there was a thing with like last week. One of your complaints, I think, was that the Starbeast was kind of playing it a bit safe, and like right
yeah,
down the line.
yes.
And this is like
Yeah.
not that at all.
No, this is taking quite a lot of risks. Actually, this is even for Doctor Who, as wild and wacky as it is, um, this is quite an innovative episode. So I think actually, yeah, you're right. That's also another contrast to the Star Beast, that this is, um, you know, really like pushing it all the way. Yeah,
And we can absolutely see the effect that Disney is having on these episodes.
yeah,
The budget is clear and present on the screen,
yeah.
and this is what I expected Disney Who to become. It's like they're not having
Mm,
any creative control. They're not like forcing like any of their stuff into it. All they're doing is giving them money, giving them
yeah,
resources, and then providing them a platform for international audiences.
yeah. Which is great.
Good. Yeah, that's amazing. That's what I want Disney Who to be.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough how giddy I was at the end of this episode.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
I just remember because last week with the Star Beasts, we made a comment that like even there were some episodes of Chibnall Who that you could consider better than the Star Beast, like
Mm.
arguably, and and that's like almost inarguable. This I feel like it's almost without question. This is the best Doctor Who's been in at least 5 years.
Oh yeah, no, this is better than at certainly I think really anything in the Tribunal era. Um, as to whether I could objectively say it's better than most of Moffat's era, even putting aside my anti-Moffat bias, I just haven't watched enough of it to confirm that. And
Well, I
certainly,
think that like no matter what you think of Moffat's era, this is definitely the best episode since Heaven Sent. I think
yeah,
Heaven Sent
oh
would be the
for
last
sure,
truly amazing episode that everyone can agree is amazing.
yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Um,
Um,
let's stop uh dilly dallying and let's get to the timescales because I want to start
mm,
like properly discussing this thing.
yeah,
So, out of 90 votes, this has an average rating of 8.7.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
I pretty much agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think the first thing I said to myself after watching it was, this is like an 8 out of 10 at least
Yeah,
for me.
easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Um I wonder, like, because it's the thing about this episode that's so bizarre to me is like, I think that once these three specials are over, this is going to be the episode that feels the least like an anniversary special. Like, it doesn't really have anything to do with the Toymaker arc, at least from what we can tell so far. It doesn't
Yeah,
reference anything from the previous episode, like in a huge way.
yeah.
And I think some people have cited that as a bit of a criticism, like, "What are we doing with this? Couldn't this have just been a regular episode for Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson?" But I don't think it does. I think this episode only works because of the history that the two characters in
Yep,
this Doctor and Donna have with each other.
for sure. You would the characterizations which have already been carefully constructed over 15 years, really, or 15 years ago. You need that to really have those sort of dramatic pinpoints really hitting as hard as they are. You
Yeah,
couldn't. I don't even think you could put this in Ncuti Gatwa's first season because there
no,
just wouldn't be enough characterization to go off of. The crucial pinpoints in the plot are all, I think, based on that characterization and how well these characters know each other.
yeah,
So yeah, I think, as you say, is it the most like anniversary special a special could be? No, but one, I'd rather an anniversary special like this with a solid story over, say, the Five Doctors, and two,
mm,
um, it does enough to sort of celebrate the show and
yeah.
especially these two characters to fit, I think, in the 60th anniversary framework.
I mean, it certainly celebrates the show's history with corridors.
Yeah.
It's the
Oh
biggest
dear.
corridor we've ever seen.
Yep.
Um, this episode has an 8.7 for plot.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
It.
It does what a lot of these really good suspenseful episodes do, which is the intrigue build around what's going on. But then,
Yep.
unlike a lot of episodes like this, the payoff when you learn the answers is actually really satisfying.
For sure, and even beyond that, there's a lot of subversions in this
Yeah,
story, in terms of how the sort of story would be handled in Doctor Who previously, both in terms of characterization, but also the plot. Super twisty. I love the scene where um, Donna and the Doctor are running from their clones, and they sort of lean up against this wall. The wall turns around, and you think, "Oh, okay, they're saved," because it's like
mm,
the turning bookcase
yeah,
sort of a thing. But then it turns back around again, and then they're
yeah.
in
It's so
trouble.
good.
It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, you think, yeah, how the fuck are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's
Um,
it's it's really exciting stuff.
9.2 for acting, which yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And thinking on it, like I didn't even put this together until a moment ago, but like I mentioned, episodes this episode draws from is stuff like
Mm.
Midnight and Rebel Flesh and Listen. It also kind of draws from Heaven Sent because for like 95% of the story, it's just David Tennant and Catherine Tate,
Mm, for sure. Um,
and they're both excellent in this.
yeah, absolutely. I will also say, in term, especially the way the clones act, like the
Oh yeah,
performances there. Um, I mean, they're great, obviously, but something that I want to highlight is there are a number of very specific instances where they get kind of campy, and I actually really love the fact that they do that because, as we've said, Doctor Who's always been campy. If you don't realize that, then what are you talking about? That's
yeah,
that's just always been the tone of the show. And as I said, I think even in our previous episode that RTD honed that campiness
mm,
quite a lot. He used it frequently, and the way he used it, it got better as his seasons went along. Like it was the campiness and the weird hokey quality, particularly with the performances and the writing too. Really, the way it all worked in seasons 3 and especially 4 is more focused than the way it worked in seasons 1 and 2, for example. But this is a continuation of that because there's these wacky moments whether it's when the two clones are behind the glass door and they're saying "tell us," over and over, or saying "think" over and over, or
yeah, yeah.
the bit that I really love, a really weird and pretty unsettling Exorcist reference with the Doctor's spider walk when he's chasing
Yeah,
Donna. Like,
100%.
there's something about that where it's funny, but it's not so funny that you can genuinely laugh at it. It's funny just in a way that's really uncanny and unsettling.
Yeah,
And when you add into that the fact that there are a number of moments where they have these really weird, fast, very jarring, the
mhm,
whole thing, it's campy in the way the Doctor Who's kind of always been, but it's still used in a very precise and effective way. And the campy moments are when it gets most unsettling. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think doing that and getting it right can be really, really difficult. And I think the fact that RTD has done that here, as well as he has, is really admirable and has very entertaining results.
8.1 for effects. There are one or two moments with the not things that kind of overextend their reach a little bit, and you can really tell the big corridor is like a green screen thing, but
Yeah.
none of it's ever hugely distracting. It's all mostly good.
No, and I think yeah, like there are moments when the spaceship's reconfiguring where like the lighting and the shadows maybe aren't quite as realistic as they could be. But apart from the fact that, as I sort of just said, Doctor Who's always had sort of a stylized style, so that works fine. There's nothing in the special effects that are really bothersome. There's nothing that really
Yeah.
sticks out to me.
I was surprised. I watched like one or two behind the scenes clips. I was surprised by how much they did practically. Like the Doctor's massive arms, those are practical effects.
Yeah,
Just like that's just the extra level.
yeah, and it's great that they do that.
8.8 for replay value. Yep, the 10 bits are still just as tense the second time through.
Yep.
When you watch it through, nothing stands out in terms of, hang on, now that we know what the story is, doesn't make sense. No, it all holds up remarkably well on rewatch.
And there are even moments, because I've watched it a couple of times, but the second time viewing it, there were moments that, like, sorry, the first time viewing it, there were some moments early on with the dialogue where I thought, is this as authentic as I want it to be? But rewatching, I actually realized, oh no, there's actually lots of really cool bits of detail, and it also just helps with setting the scene and establishing what's just happened in the previous episode. So those bits got a little bit better, and yeah, everything in terms of the tense plot, the twists, it all holds up on multiple watches for sure.
And 45 out of 76 people say this story requires a previous.
I mean,
I think in more than one place, you do have to have seen previous episodes, in unexpected ways as well, and we'll get to them when we get.
I agree. I mean, like, obviously, like, it would be helpful if you've just seen the Star Beast just to, sort of establish, why these characters are doing what they're doing and why they are where they are. But also, again, that crucial relationship between Donna and the Doctor, you'd really need to know what that is to get the full weight of these moments, because again, they form so much of not just characterization but the plot points in this story. So I think you'd almost certainly have to have seen previous episodes.
Let's jump right in. So I suppose I want to start with the setting of this episode. And the fact that they've chosen to put it on the edge of the universe. We've been outside the universe before in The Doctor's Wife. The Doctor describes this little planet on the outside of the universe like a soap bubble with a tiny soap bubble clinging to the outside of it. This is something else entirely. Like, you can really, like, when they zoom out to show like the complete nothingness outside of the spaceship, you really get a sense of just like the eerie nature of where exactly they're at. And that entire conversation that the Doctor has, the entire monologue the Doctor has about, the light hasn't gotten here yet. No one's ever come this far. Like, that entire sequence was the first moment where I really found myself falling in love with the episode, because that's the first time you really feel like something crawling down your spine with just like the dialogue and the setting and the evocation that it has. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that was, I think, maybe the first moment where I'm like, oh man, this is feeling like a classic bit of RTD, classic bit of innovation. It's starting to feel good. I'm getting excited because it is quite chilling. Not just with the concept, although it is quite frightening, but the way the Doctor describes it, that dialogue with him and Donna is quite effective, really.
I think the dialogue is largely a huge strength of this episode. it goes hand in hand with the story naturally, but just the conversations and the small things that the characters let slip throughout, even though like like I said, it is just two actors talking to each other for 50 minutes,
Hmm.
but like God, he understands who these gut people are.
Yep,
He just
absolutely.
gets them so well.
Yep. As I said, with the Star Beast, whatever my criticisms of that episode were, you do get the impression that he understands these characters to a significant degree, and even if that wasn't translating as well as I may have wanted it to, it's definitely coming through here, for sure.
Yeah, and then we
Um,
throw in the threat of the episode, which are
hmm,
the, as they're called, not things.
hmm,
These creatures that exist, I suppose, in the void, outside of the universe. Oh, no, it's the void's between dimensions, so that wouldn't be the same thing. But they exist outside of the universe. They don't have any concept of shape or size or mass,
hmm,
and they are integrating and learning as much as they can about the Doctor and Donna in order to fully become them, so that they can uh, enter the universe properly and sort of ravage it, because they've been
hmm,
sort of corrupted by what they have learned from
hmm.
listening in. Jesus Christ, it's really like really effective villain for this story. They're
Yeah,
really creepy.
for sure. They are quite unsettling, and even the bit where they grow to gigantic size and they've got those sort of morphing features on their face. Again, that's a moment that could have been really silly, but it's quite unsettling, really.
Mm.
Um, which is great, and also really great use of body horror, which is
Oh yeah, the body
really
horror
cool.
aspect of it is really strong in this. And I was just amazed at how many times they were able to pull the which one is the real one scene.
Yeah.
Because after they do it the first time, you're
Mm,
like, okay, well, I've done that trope. Now we can move on. But
mm.
no, they do it like 3 or 4 times.
Yep. And I think again, it's on the foundation of those strong characterizations and the fact that RTD understands who these characters are. That really sort of keeps the audience guessing.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
which is why he can afford, to put in so many, who's the real one moments. Because that, as you say, that in the hands of another writer, that could get stale after one attempt.
Hmm.
So the fact that he's done this as well as he has is really exciting stuff.
I think my favorite reveal in the entire episode, it's when the Doctor and Donna are in separate rooms.
Mm,
They're doing different things, and while Donna's rearranging the stuff, you see the Doctor
mm,
come back in and sit down and have a chat, and it's like
mm.
a really pleasant chat that they have.
Yeah,
But then it cuts across to what the Doctor's doing in the other room,
yeah, that
and
was
for a split second, you think, "Oh, this is cool." They're flashing back and forth between different
yeah,
times,
yeah, yeah,
but then you think, "Wait, hang on, that
yeah.
doesn't make any sense."
Because
Like,
they cut back from what the room that Donna's in, and then they cut to the room the Doctor's in, but then they cut back to the other room. And when I
yeah,
was watching it, I'm like, man, that's really weird. Well, first off, just interjecting what Donna and the fake Doctor are doing with what the actual Doctor is doing. That seemed kind of weird to me. But then when it cut back, I'm like, oh, this is weird. This makes me feel uncomfortable, but also really excited. What's going on here? Yeah. And then when it's revealed, it's like, oh my God, this is insane.
yeah, I know.
So yeah,
I also just
great,
I
great
love
stuff.
the way that they utilize the TARDIS in this, and that seems weird to say because like it's not in the
Mm,
episode at all. But they set up the Hads as the reason the TARDIS vanished, but
yep.
then they make the Hads not only a part of the villain's plan,
Mm,
but also the resolution.
yep.
Because they
And it doesn't.
establish what the not things want
Mm,
is to become fully realized as real people enough that the TARDIS detects no threat anymore and comes back for
mm,
them.
mm. And I
It's
think
yeah, so well written.
yeah, like, and the way it comes in and saves them, it, that it doesn't feel cheap in any way
No, not
because
at all.
because the TARDIS it just comes back basically.
Yeah, it comes back
Um,
right at the last second.
but because the HADs had already been set up, it still really works.
Yeah,
Um,
and of course the TARDIS would want to come back at that point. Like when you
yeah,
think about it, it makes perfect sense. There's no risk of the not things
mm,
getting into the universe anymore, and the TARDIS has tanked an explosion before, so it wouldn't
yeah,
detect that as a threat. So
mm,
perfect. And I know that one of the criticisms of the last episode a lot of people had was that the sonic screwdriver was overpowered.
mm,
I don't think we had the same complaint because we established the amount of time it would take to set up one of those shield things.
Hmm.
But even the way they took the sonic screwdriver out of commission as well was
Yeah.
really clever.
And the funny thing is, I didn't even realize that too much. Like, I knew obviously it happened because it happens in the episode, but I don't know, the plot is so tense that you don't miss it all that much. But now that I think back on it, it's like, well, yeah, like the Doctor, it probably would have been more useful for the Doctor to have the sonic screwdriver because he probably could have switched all the walls and reconfigured the ship to find Donna more easily. But the fact that it's not there makes the plot more tense, which is really good.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So the actual story of this slow bomb that the ship is becoming, the drip feeds of information you get are perfectly timed, you know?
Hmm.
Start out with the robot, and it's like, okay, what's this thing doing here? Then the ship reconfigures itself for some reason. You see the robot take a step, so it's clearly not broken. It's doing something.
Hmm.
There's this constant banging on the outside of the hull. There's a question of why the airlock opened. Initially, you think it was the not things getting in,
Hmm.
but then it's revealed that wasn't actually the case. And then like it's all revealed in essentially that one scene where the not things basically exploit the Doctor's weakness, or his fatal flaw rather, in that he like has to know all the answers. So
Yeah, that was great. And a
really, really,
wonderful,
yeah,
wonderful subversion of the Revelation scene that we've seen
yeah,
over and over
totally.
in Doctor Who.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really great to make the revelation something that the villains want to happen instead of something that the villains
Yeah.
want to avoid.
And yeah, instead of being this wonderful, satisfying, oh, that's how you beat the werewolf sort of moment, it becomes tense because like, yeah, I'm curious, but no, Doctor, don't do it. What are you,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Yeah, great, great stuff.
And then we get the full reveal how the captain of this ship 3 years ago realized that these creatures were trying to become her and that she didn't want them learning how to fly the ship. So
Mm,
she set the ship to slow explode and then threw herself out of the airlock so that they couldn't learn what she was doing and they would be powerless to stop it. Even that on its own would make a fantastic short film, right? Just like if this wasn't in the universe of Doctor Who, just like seeing this story play out like in the time that it actually did would have been a really compelling story to see the captain like figuring out what she has to do, coming to terms with it, not wanting to do it, trying to find another way, but then throwing herself out the airlock to save the universe.
yeah, for sure.
That on its own is compelling, but then when you jump ahead 3 years and then like you have the aftermath and you got to piece it together.
Yeah, like that first story about the captain, that I could easily see that, happening in an extended universe story. That sounds like a big Finish story.
100%, yeah.
I hope they do that actually. That'd be interesting.
Maybe.
Um,
It. I don't know. I think we've now that we've already got it. I think maybe it might work. I wouldn't hold my breath, but
yeah, true, true. Either way, as you say, like, yeah, that alone theoretically could be interesting at least.
yeah. And you'll notice we've already finished summarizing the plot, and that's because that's really like it's really like simple. And I think that's another reason why they didn't want to reveal too much about this in the next time trailers, because once you show alternate Doctor and Donna, that's
Yeah,
like 75% of the episode, and
yeah,
then the plot is really minimal. And then what takes a front seat are the really, really great conversations that they all have.
yeah.
So let's get into those now.
Mm,
There's of course the initial conversations on either room. Um, with all Madonna's talking about Wilf and talking about her family,
mm,
and then the doctor's he's doing this. I forget what the analogy is, but he's doing this long-winded analogy to try and summarize like the situation. And the whole time, the others are just like they're watching, and at the time, the not things start like they start out kind of empathetic, but they get slowly more and more vacant
mm.
as the conversations go on, which is I think another reason why uh that initial moment is as tense as it is, because like you're slowly realizing at the same time that the characters are that something's not right.
Yeah, yeah. My arms are too long. That's
My
it's
arms are too long. Yeah, it's
yeah,
it's the kind of villain line that on repetition really gets the nerves chilling again. It's kind of like reminiscent of something like "Hey, who turned out the lights?"
Yeah. Or even, I mean, maybe not quite as iconic as Exterminate, but still the same
Well, yeah,
similar thing, which is really great.
yeah, and it's odd because like at times a villain repeating a line or a phrase or something like that can be not amazing, like when the Wire keeps yelling about how hungry she is.
Yeah.
But I think this, like I said, like we said already, it evokes enough body horror stuff and the unsettling nature of it all. We're like,
Yeah, well,
oh god,
it works as a line of dialogue because it's just that final little nail in the coffin that comments on the horrifying situation, so you're kind of putting all the puzzle pieces together. And
yeah.
that's the last one. It's like, oh, right, something's going on, man, and it doesn't look good. You know.
But you know which conversation would have leapt out at us the most? It's the one that uh, all of a sudden legitimized some of Chibnall's biggest mistakes. It's the one scene where they acknowledge both Timeless Child and the Flux.
Yeah,
Now this was kind of shocking in the moment, even though I had heard in advance that this episode would reference those things.
I
Uh,
didn't, so
yeah, I think
but
it was around the time that there was the rumor that RTD would try and sweep the entire Chibnall era under the rug, and
mm,
he had to come out and go, "Of course, I'm not going to do that." And he specifically mentioned that Wild Blue Yonder it has like a big
mm,
importance with one or both of those stories.
mm.
And like good it's fun. It's so much fun to watch him try and make those stories good.
Look, I think you even said when we were talking about the centenary special, because we talked about the Flux and how
Yeah.
frustrating we found it. But I think you said one of the issues was, yeah, like the way that series ends is half the universe gets destroyed, and the Doctor doesn't really, I think, react to it all that
No,
much.
she doesn't have any kind of strong feelings about it whatsoever.
Yeah. So, good that that
Yeah,
RTD resolve that.
yeah, he's actually acknowledged that no, of course the Doctor would be impacted by the sudden and like brutal death of half of the universe, Chris.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and in a weird way, it almost leaves you wondering, like, this edge of the universe, was this part of space devastated by flux? Like, are the events of this episode uh is the flux and the Doctor's inaction of thereof directly responsible for the events of this episode happening?
hmm,
Maybe. Like, it's not clear which side of the universe the flux came from or which side they're on now.
yeah,
But maybe.
it's possible. Um, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if RTD was gonna sort of layer that into the overall story arcs. Um,
I mean, someone
yeah,
has to, and it's not going to
yeah.
be Chris because he had his chance already.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he also references Timeless Child when the not thing impersonating Donna
Mm,
brings up that the Doctor doesn't know where they're from,
mm,
and it starts out almost like a scene where the Doctor and Donna in that place acknowledge that the other are real because Donna is like really trying to connect with the Doctor about the loss or the hurt that he's been
yep.
throughout that entire debacle.
Mm,
And again, it's really good of RTD to try because like the most we ever got in terms of how it affects the Doctor out of any of the Timeless Child stuff is just an incredibly base level, oh, I'm not who I thought I was. And then in the same episode coming around to, but that doesn't matter because I know who I am now.
yeah.
He did that
So
twice. He did it twice in Timeless Child or Children and Revelation of the or Revolution of the Daleks. It's the exact same story.
you know, I'm blanking a little bit on the exact details of those episodes. I don't know if that's because my mind is deliberately trying to block them out, but Yeah, I mean that makes sense because yeah, that is basically what happens.
Yeah.
Oh no, 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 Cuff, what are you talking about? You're forgetting the other really important plot point that the Doctor discovers that the Time Lords
Oh
lie
yeah.
about stuff.
Ah, yes, of course.
I
Yeah.
mean,
That shocking revelation. I can't believe that was the most brutal change to canon that episode did. The recontextualizing the Time Lords as bad people, and then after 57 years, it hadn't been done before.
I'm still. I mean, look, maybe I. It is mainly because this was pointed out to me by JXI's
Yeah, of
video, but
course.
like, I'll never get over that. Never.
No,
And
and
what a
I'm sure that
bad
like
story choice that was.
I'm sure that like it would have been clearly evident to us on a second viewing anyway, especially as we go through this series, because we will have,
Oh
or
yeah,
this podcast rather, because we will have seen time and time and time again the Time Lords being, uh, not good people who would
yeah,
lie at the drop of a hat if it maintains their reputation.
yeah,
Um, but in the moment, I think when we first watched the episode, I think we were more focusing on the whole. Wait, what's the new canon? This makes no sense. I think we had other things on our
yeah.
mind on our first viewing, and
That's
I think
true.
I think you might agree that after watching it once, neither of us really wanted to watch it again.
No, no. It was yeah. God, actually, and I don't. Okay, here is actually a little bit of confusion. Okay, so they've acknowledged that it happens in this episode,
Yeah.
but I think even you've said your knowledge of Revival Who is better than mine, but I think you said there are just a whole bunch of contradictions that arise with the revelation of the Timeless Child story arc. And, I mean, yeah, that's what you said, wasn't it? There is a lot of
There are more things that work against it in the canon than
mm,
things that support it.
yeah. So I wonder, like, how I don't know, is RTD gonna deal with that at some point?
Uh,
I guess we'll have to wait
I
and
don't,
see. But
my guess would be that the most he's ever going to do is just kind of acknowledge that it happened and not really look into it that much.
yeah,
Because, like, the time to actually flesh that out would have been during 13's run.
and
Any
yeah,
attempt to go back and sort of recontextualize any of it, or legitimize any of it, or twist any of it around so it makes sense, would absolutely be seen by Chibnall purists as a betrayal.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um,
The best that he can do is every now and then be like, no, no, it's okay. It still happened. Now shut up about it. We have new doctors to explore.
yeah, I mean, and look, God love him. He, the fact that he's even attempting that, like, good for him. And
Well, it's saying something when this conversation about it is by far the most compelling thing that has ever come out of that arc.
yeah,
The
actually,
fact this conversation, and it works both ways. It works as one way to be like, whichever way you look at it, it's either Donna attempting to connect with the Doctor, or it's a not thing trying to get under the Doctor's skin. And
yeah, yeah,
either way, it works as a conversational tactic.
for sure. And kind of in a way goes back to sort of what I said about the revelation of Beat the Meep, in that
Mm,
good twists work. They kind of work even if you do know what they are, because watching it on the second time is like, oh, I know why, you know, the not doctors are not talking all that much, or why the fake Donna is having these conversations, because it's it all works as part of the plot.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, quite good stuff.
Um, it's quite a small moment in the episode, but they draw a light on it in the epilogue. So let's briefly discuss what we think it means.
Mm.
The scene where the Doctor invokes the superstition of counting salt.
Yeah. Um.
First of all, that's like just a good scene in order to like show the weaknesses of these villains and watch them overcome them and become
Mm,
stronger. But also the fact that the Doctor directly references that happening and says, "Huh, I invoked a superstition at the edge of the universe where the walls are the weakest." Hope
yeah.
that won't mean anything in the future.
Yeah, and I love that because that felt like such a classic RTD setup.
Yeah.
Um,
My question is, do we think it's a setup for next week or for series 14?
um,
Because I personally think it's not going to be relevant until the 15th Doctor comes along.
yeah,
That
I'd
is
say
going
so
to,
too.
which is going to legitimize this episode's place in the 14th Doctor run, as opposed to being a
Yeah,
15th Doctor episode.
I don't.
There's every possibility that in like exactly 5 days, we're both going to be proven wrong about that.
Yeah,
But I don't see how it can relate to the toy maker at this point.
yeah, and I can't even 100% say why, but yes, I think that it probably will be a much later season setup. It just because it's small enough that you could easily forget it if it's not dealt with for several episodes, but then when it finally is, it's like, oh, that's what this was. So yes, I would imagine it's probably a next season sort of a deal instead of being invoked with the toy maker. Having said that, um, based on what I know of the toy maker, because I think I've mentioned I'd
Yes.
listened to the Celestial Toy Maker story, that would sort of track because
Oh yeah.
like being at the edge of the universe and being almost outside the universe, that makes sense because they basically say that the toy maker is has enough power to will up his own universe and he exists
Ah,
outside the universe. And
right.
even when his universes stop existing, because they do when people leave them, he still exists. So if there was something weird that had to do with the toy maker, being involved in this salt business, it wouldn't surprise me. But I would also be equally unsurprised if it showed up, in a much later episode. So either way, I think.
Yeah. I don't. It's odd, right? It feels a lot like to me. It feels a lot like the Queen Elizabeth tease at the end of Shakespeare Code. How the
Mm,
end of that episode tacks on a, oh, Queen Elizabeth knows me and she wants me dead. Well, this is news to me. What am I gonna do to her? And then we had to wait until the 50th anniversary to get the payoff for that.
mm,
It feels
mm.
kind of like a similar vibe where it's like, okay, the episode's resolved, and like I think if the Doctor had said, "Huh, I invoked a superstition," and then everything started like exploding in on Earth, I think that
Mm.
might have tipped us off a bit more. That it's like, okay, no, this is a direct result of the salt thing.
Yeah,
But the fact that it isn't that, and it's just like an incidental scene that happens inside the TARDIS, it says to me a bit more. Okay, no, this is something that they're referencing to draw back to later, and that makes me more happy than if it is for next time because that's going to like it also reminds me of the whole storyline regarding the Doctor's hand getting cut off,
yeah,
and how that was
that's
something
what
that
I
was
thought
set
of
up
too.
at one point, and then it took multiple seasons, and it got paid off in different ways, and it all led to this end of series 4. And I'm so happy if this is the case because it's gonna be just like the RTD1 when
Yeah,
everything felt really planned out every season, and every season strung into each other, and it always leaned towards this one thing, and all the storylines made sense. And that's something I've
yeah,
been missing from Doctor Who for so long, and if we're getting
absolutely.
it back, then ha!
Yeah, it's so exciting. And it's those. I mean, it's true of the episode generally, but those little moments where I thought, oh, again, this is classic RTD writing. This is going to come back somehow, and it feels satisfying and great. On a similar note, I
Yeah,
want to address the gravity of the situation.
yeah, okay.
Because
I was wondering when we were going to bring up Isaac Newton. This is by far the most controversial thing that has happened in this
mm,
episode.
mhm.
It's the thing that conservative bigots have latched onto and gone,
Yeah.
this one thing means the whole episode sucks.
Oh, Jesus.
I legitimately saw a thumbnail where it was like, Doctor Who cancelled? It's like, no, it's fucking
Oh,
not.
fuck
Shut up.
off.
I
Yeah,
know.
like, what are you talking about? Oh,
Oh no, sorry, no. There's two things the
mm,
conservative bigots have latched
mm.
onto. That and the one line where the Doctor implies they might be, at the very least, bisexual now.
Which honestly,
I just assumed that the whole time,
yeah,
honestly.
that wouldn't surprise. Like, as a long-term Doctor Who fan, that wouldn't surprise me. It just wouldn't.
No, not at all.
So I don't know why anyone would latch on to that. So yeah, it, you know, conservative blockheads
Yeah, we can put that to one side. The Isaac
for
Newton
sure.
scene at the beginning, I think, and it's tough saying this, but I do think it is the weakest part of the episode.
Yeah, look, the way that was structured into the episode, that made me a little bit nervous because it's really disjointed from the rest of the plot.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that it basically just climaxes with a joke, felt quite unsatisfying. And the other thing that I thought was like,
Is there gonna be any pre-title sequence scene in this run of episodes that you like?
maybe.
I mean, we'll see. At the very least, it looks like the next episode is going to pick up from a very specific point. So I would be hard pressed
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is as disjointed as the other two have been.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So it felt really disjointed in the moment, like what it just that scene itself, and sort of broadly how it fits in the rest of the plot. Yeah, it felt disjointed, and I got kind of nervous about that.
Hmm.
And I also thought because it then that scene ends with Isaac Newton saying, mavity instead of gravity, and I just thought that doesn't seem like a very responsible thing for the Doctor to do, to just mess around with the timeline that
No.
recklessly. And I realize that, it's Doctor Who, you can't be like they play fast and loose with the timeline sometimes.
Yeah,
But that just felt
people have highlighted that at one point Tom Baker's Doctor has described a conversation that he had with Isaac Newton. So
right.
people have said, okay, well, did that not
Mm,
happen anymore?
yeah.
I can just easily interpret that as Tom Baker's Doctor showing off and talking about something that never happened, just to make
Oh yeah,
sure
no,
to impress
yeah,
someone.
yeah. Tom Baker was a bit of a wild card, so but just generally, like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's examples I'm not thinking of, but that just messing around with the timeline just seems like something the Doctor wouldn't do in that way, especially given that we've had episodes like the Time Meddler, where the Doctor cries out against that sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
And sorry, go
I'll
ahead.
so no, I'll the Doctor leaves long before Isaac Newton gets confused about that. It's entirely possible that he makes that joke about the gravity of the situation, thinking that Isaac Newton would go, "Oh, gravity. That's a good word for that thing I've already discovered.
Yeah,
I'll now get to work on that." So I don't think
yeah,
he thought it would impact much. And then it's not
yeah.
until he hears Donna say Mavi that he goes, "Huh, like,
Yeah.
uh-oh, I'll fix
Well,
that
that's
later."
that's the thing. If that scene had just been there and there'd been no reference to it throughout the episode at all, I would be annoyed because again, it feels disjointed,
Yes.
and it's basically just sort of leading up to a joke. But the fact that we now have consequences for this
Hmm.
is really exciting for me because again, this just speaks to the detail and the layering of these sorts of things in RTD plots that you and I fell in love with to begin with. So I honestly think that this whole Mavity situation is probably going to show up again. I don't know how, and I don't know if it's going to involve something weird happening with the timeline that the Doctor's going to have to reckon with at some point. But I like it because it's so sort of it's such a weird trivial detail, but they keep bringing it back. I just keep thinking that's got to pay off in some major way. I mean, as you say, we had a situation where the Doctor's hand getting cut off paid off seasons later. So just knowing RTD, knowing his writing like I do, I just think there's got to be something here.
Yeah.
Um, it's both. It's weirdly they've paid too much attention to it not to for it to be nothing, but it's also not paid enough attention for it to be like super obvious. So I think there's got to be something deliberate going on here. Like you don't put those sorts of jokes in an episode without seriously thinking about what you can sort of do with them. So I think it's the Mavity thing is going to come back in some way. I don't know how, but I think it will.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is the extent of it, and they just have a thing in a future episode where someone like where the Doctor says, well, someone says gravity, and the Doctor says, "Oh, it's a good thing I sorted that out."
It just I mean I guess, but I just it's just I don't know. Maybe it's just a feeling I have, but it just seems something that's gonna crop
Sure,
up again.
I guess for me, it's just so for me, it's more like I don't know how it could pop
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
I'd be
Yeah.
love to be proven wrong, and especially because
Mhm.
that would make that Isaac Newton scene extremely pivotal to a future storyline, which is just going to make
Yeah.
certain people very happy.
Yeah, it's But that even that in itself, having this seemingly standalone scene be pivotal to some future story arc, again, that feels like a sort of a classic RTD setup. So it wouldn't
Sure.
surprise me if it all sort of fit in. Um, yeah, so I'm keen to see if that does evolve into anything.
We've talked about the beginning. Let's talk about the ending. We get to see Wilfred again.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
so happy when he shows up. You can't not be happy when you see that man again.
yeah, and it's a wonderful thing where it's and I know I've complained quite a lot about the what I view as the excessive use of sort of sentimentality in the Moffat era, but it's not excessive. This feels
No.
perfectly right. It's really pleasant. It's
Yes.
kind of understated, and also Murray Gold's score is just, it's working in there enough to sort of hammer home uh the dramatic weight of the moment, but
Yeah.
it's a really special scene. Um,
Especially because this is it. Like they've confirmed
yeah,
that this is the only scene they managed to shoot with Bernard Cribbins before he passed.
yeah,
So I assume at the start of the next episode we're going to get some kind of explanation as to it's a good okay. We've dropped Wilfred off so he's safe. Now let's deal with this thing,
yeah,
and that's going to be the extent of it, which is a shame because I would have liked to have seen him play a bigger role in the third episode, which I assume would
yeah,
have been the initial plan.
yeah. But as it
But
is, yeah,
if this is the only scene we get, I'm happy it's the scene where they see each other for the first time, and not a
yeah,
scene future down the line after they would have met, which makes no sense, and they might have to cut. This they don't have to cut. This is perfectly placed.
yeah, for sure.
I just love seeing the look on his face when he sees David Tennant's Doctor again. Like, can you imagine how much guilt that man must have been carrying around with him all these years? Like,
Mm,
he knows that he is directly responsible for the death of the Doctor that time around.
mm,
And I think when he sees the TARDIS, he's expecting anyone else to step out of that door apart from that face.
yeah,
So when he sees it again, like that overwhelming relief that is clear, and like he's overcome by it all, and he has to pop his hand over his mouth, and he has a little bit of a shake with excitement.
mm,
And so I just want to give him I mean, the Doctor's instinct is right. I just want to give him the biggest hug at that moment.
yeah. You remember like all those memories of why everyone loved Wilf, they just come flooding back. Um,
It's gonna be so special when we catch up to series 4 for the podcast, and we get to
for
watch
sure.
all those
Yeah,
Wilfred scenes again over and over again.
yeah. Because
Oh my god.
I think you would certainly agree. This Wilfred's part in the plot of what's the name of the last two David Tennant episodes? The End of Time.
The end of time, yeah.
That I think you would agree that those are some of the strongest elements in those episodes.
Easily, maybe there's some of the strongest elements in any Doctor Who episode ever. Like those
Yeah,
scenes where it's just him and the Doctor having a discussion, two old war heroes regaling tales to each other.
yeah.
Just incredible writing.
Also, speaking of sort of war hero-y stuff, um, the inclusion of the Wild Blue Yonder, the song, was interesting, and
Yeah.
it was one of the things that I appreciated more on a second watch when Donna was talking about how, Wilf used to say, "Oh, you shouldn't sing that song. It's not jolly. It's about going off to war." I thought,
Hmm.
yeah, what a great little bit of characterization. It's
Yeah,
just
100%.
it's small, it's subtle, but it really works. I think.
Great having moments like that in the show again because
Yeah.
you would never get character moments that small and that subtle in Chibnall era because the
No.
Chibnall era was always structured like character scene, plot scene, character scene, plot scene. Do they mesh? Who cares?
Yeah. And that's actually kind of the best part about this story that
Mm,
because we've already said it didn't take too long to get through the synopsis of the plot, but
yeah,
that's because it is such a character-driven story.
yeah,
Um, and even more than many character-driven stories, in that the characters and their characterizations literally drive the plot to a considerable degree, which is really really great stuff. And as you said, yeah, like we were sorely missing that in the Chibnall era. So the fact that finally, after so many years, that we've gotten to this point again is really, really exciting.
mm,
I want to highlight another part of the ending, and that's the climax.
yes.
The
I was about to
scene
get to this
where the Doctor's trying to figure out which one's the real Donna, and he
one.
takes
Yeah,
one in the TARDIS. God, that scene was great.
I know,
It
right?
was
Because like,
so tense.
as he makes the choice, you feel like he's got it right in the moment as well.
Exactly. It makes
When
perfect
Donna's yeah,
sense.
exactly. When one Donna says it's funny because it's, I don't know, a vegetable as a last name, and then the other Donna says it's just funny.
Yeah.
You immediately think that's the right Donna. But
Yeah.
then the minute that she goes away, and that the second Donna that's left behind is just screaming into the air for no reason, you think,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
wait. But
And
even throughout that
mm,
entire ending, when there's like one Donna on the TARDIS and she's kind of looking around gleefully,
mm,
part of you is in the back of your mind is kind of thinking, are they going to like reveal? Is this going to be like a bait and switch where, as the explosion reaches the Donna on the ship, even though she's like crying and everything, she's going
mm,
to reach in and go, "Oh well, worth a try," and then die.
yeah.
But no,
Well,
it's like,
mm,
oh god, so
it
good.
yeah, like it's because when I was watching it, like, so she gets on the TARDIS leaves, and then the real Donna starts screaming. And at first, I thought, oh, maybe this is just a tactic
Yeah,
done by the fake Donna. Maybe um she thinks because she doesn't quite understand exactly how the TARDIS works. She thinks, oh, no, I can call to this disapparating
yeah,
object.
exactly.
The Doctor will be able to hear me, and I'll. But then as the scene keeps going, it's like your heart is dropping into lower parts of your body when you're seeing it's like, oh, wait a minute, no, she's really crying here, she's really
Yeah.
looking upset,
Oh
that's
god.
really uncomfortable, oh god. And it's such a great subversion.
Mm.
And because it happens so late in the story, you could argue it doesn't have like a super important impact on the plot line itself because we're basically at the end, but it all comes back to the fact that this is a character piece.
Yeah.
So it really helps with that characterization by really sort of tugging at the audience's heartstrings. And this is kind of why we both said that you really need to see previous Donna and Doctor episodes to really understand the weight of that moment and how intense it is. And it honestly got to the point where I, like, in that moment when the explosion is heading for Donna, I'd in the moment I'd kind of forgotten. Oh, we've got a whole nother episode that Donna shows up in. So I actually did think,
Is this what
good
she
God,
died?
is she gonna die?
Yeah,
Like,
I know, right?
oh my God, like the fact that it came that close, it just, man, and it doesn't, because it's one of those things where having a super twisty element like that could feel really cheap, but it
Mm.
doesn't. It feels
No,
so satisfying. And I also think, in terms of the broader character arcs in these specials, I think that's going to be helpful because I think what this scene will do will sort of sow a seed of mistrust between Donna and the Doctor. The fact that
maybe.
the Doctor forgot Donna, I mean, like, that's pretty massive. They obviously didn't acknowledge it too much in the end there because I just didn't have the time. But I
Yeah, well,
think,
also he realized his mistake, right? That
yeah,
was
which is true. But I think the mere fact that it happened in that way, I feel like that's going to come up
it
thematically
might. Who knows? Yeah.
in the next episode, because that certainly there's a lot of potential there for drama.
Mm.
So I'll be very interested to see if it crops up again with the giggle. I just think,
I am not.
yeah,
I'm not certain it will. I think
mm,
it's going to rather sow a seed of she almost died last time, and we know there's a line coming up where the Doctor says, "I don't know if I can save you this time."
that's true.
I think it's going to be like, okay,
Yeah,
so she's had a few like close brushes with death over the last couple of
yeah.
episodes. Is this where it finally catches up to
Mm.
her?
Either way, like, good characterization, and
Yeah,
this helps sets up that further characterization. I'll still wait and see if they do have a sort of a mistrust subplot. I'll be interested to see if they do, but as you say, it may just be a question of, oh, I've already nearly lost my friend a couple of times here. I can't, let that happen again.
and it's
Um,
also a great to call back to the whole "my arm's too long" thing as a way of
yeah.
resolving it all,
Oh,
just
for
coming full
sure,
circle like it all should.
for sure. Um, I'm gonna suggest something here.
Yeah.
Would you say, because I know we've talked about, RTD scripts that RTD wrote himself and how some of them have been a little
Oh,
bit shaky.
yeah.
Would
Good point.
would you say that this is one of that RTD has written himself?
At the very least, in terms of what we've looked at for the podcast so far, yes, I think it's
Hmm.
up there with "Parting of the Ways" as
Yeah,
his
yeah,
best
yeah.
solely written story. I think I might prefer Midnight to this episode,
Sure.
just because Midnight is so unique and it does what this episode does but like to an insanely bigger degree.
Mhm.
In that it does similar things of like it's really really tense. It weaponizes the Doctor's strengths against him. Uh,
Mm.
it's well, it's something of a bottle episode as well. I think Midnight is superior to this as an individual episode, but this is
Sure.
certainly up there with peak Russell T Davies when he was
Mm.
like on song in series 4.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't seen Midnight in years, so I can't quite comment on that. I do know it's got a quite a really good reputation. But yeah, I can't speak to its quality, but certainly it's up there, I think, with one of his best generally, and definitely I think probably, as you say, at least as good as Parting of the Ways, maybe even a little better in its own way. Um,
So what would you score it?
Actually, no, you know what? I'm just realizing maybe not quite as good as Parting of the Ways, because Parting of the Ways had that great sort of, final characterization for the Doctor, but still very good. So, in terms of a score, as I said, it's at least an 8. I'm tempted to give it a 9. I'm just comparing it to the other 9s that I've, given
I
out.
I'll easily give it a 9. I
Sure,
really enjoy this story.
sure. Because I'll compare it to things again, Parting of the Ways, and the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit. Admittedly, the Satan Pit episodes, as I've discussed, that's got more of a personal
Hmm.
connection for me, so that might be influencing it.
Sure.
You know what? Yeah, I think I am also going to give it a 9. It's one of those things where, as I said, it got better for me on a second watch. Even the bits that seemed a little weak, improved. The good bits were easily as good the second time as they were the first time, and because of the detail and the characterizations, I think I feel like there's a lot of fodder here to call back on, in
Mm,
later seasons. So I think, in the context of the show going forward, this is actually going to only improve in a way,
yeah.
as time passes, because you know what I mean. Like, you just get that
Oh yeah.
feeling.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a 9. Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I think it'll age pretty well. Um, People will be looking back and thinking, "Oh, that's what this, and this meant," and man, what a great, weird, innovative little episode. Yeah, so I'm pretty satisfied with a 9, and man, RTD, God love you. We are back in this thing, man. Like,
We are back.
this is, oh God.
Now I
You,
would go through our predictions and see if we can award any points. None of our predictions have any relevance to the events of this episode, largely
nope.
because we knew nothing about this episode going in, so there'd be nothing to predict.
Yeah.
So next week is really going to be when we're going to decide this thing. I'm still currently up 400 to nothing. Anything could
Mm.
change next week
Yeah, it could be
when
anything could
we
really happen.
when we review the Giggle, the end of
Um,
the 60th anniversary specials, the end of the 14th Doctor, and the beginning of the 15th.
yes, I think so. Yeah, so let's sort of just call this here. This is a great episode.
Yeah,
It's wild. It's subversive. It's innovative. It's overflowing with great characterizations. It highlights RTD's strengths as a writer and as a showrunner. This, as we've said, could easily stack up amongst certainly some of the best RTD written scripts during RTD's era, and even I think in the maybe at least top 15, maybe even top 10 best stories in the RTD era. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's saying a bit much, but yeah, it's this is really good. This is a wonderful return to form, and it makes me so excited for the future of the show. So yeah,
definitely. I'm a little surprised that we're doing all of the Toymaker stuff in the next episode. I assumed it would be a
yeah, a little
consistent
bit.
thing across all three, but there's quite a lot they've got to get done next week, right? They've got to introduce the Toymaker to a new audience. They've got to reintroduce units. They've got to
Yeah,
find a way for the 14th Doctor to regenerate. They're apparently at war with the human race.
yeah,
They've got to give Donna a satisfying end that makes the end of Series 4 not feel cheap.
yeah.
It's
Um,
it's a tough
hmm.
ask. Do you
Yeah,
think he can do
it's
it?
I think. There's a part of me that wonders if we'll look back on it, and simply because the scope of the next episode is going to have to be so big, maybe he won't quite you know make the whole thing satisfying. Maybe we'll look back and say that the Wild Blue Yonder was the best of the three specials. But I still have hope. Certainly, I think there's enough evidence when you look at RTD's whole track record with the show and this episode that he has the potential to do it. I think
Hmm.
he can potentially certainly pull all of it off. But it would still be tall order. It would be a tall order for any writer, I think. So I guess we'll really just have to wait and see. And because, like you say, there's not the only real sort of foreshadowing that they've done for the giggle is the whole, if destiny exists, it's heading for Donna Noble. Um, and I say that mostly because, again, I've listened to the audio of the Toymaker story. That would track because the Toymaker is very much, like a puppet master. They kind of, they do that visual in the next episode based on the trailers. Um, so if a lot of what's happened in these specials has been sort of manipulated by the toy maker in some way, that would track. But um, beyond that, there hasn't really been a lot of foreshadowing to the giggle. So yeah, as you
Well, we've
say,
had
he's got a
the
lot to do.
the Meep has a boss,
Oh yeah, that's true.
and also there's been questions raised about why David Tennant's face is back on the Doctor now.
Yeah,
That those alongside the whole Destiny's heading for Donna are things that the episode's going to have to address.
yeah, for sure.
Um, I'm looking forward to an episode that's going a million miles a minute for like 90% of the run.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
gonna be pretty
if
wild.
if it is a bit slower than that, I'm not mad about it, but I'm bracing myself for something that is trying to cram
Mm.
quite a lot in. I hope it succeeds. I hope we get a satisfying end to this whole 60th anniversary journey.
Mm.
Um,
Question actually, do you think the next episode's gonna have an extended running time? Are we gonna
I
have a
ooh,
90-minute story instead
um,
of 55?
maybe. I think if it was, we might know about it by now because BBC TV figures would have been, or the like air times would have been announced for British television, and we might know
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
bit longer. Maybe they have announced it, or they haven't yet, and we're about to learn it. I don't know. I'd be open to the idea of like an hour and a half special for the end of
Yeah,
this journey,
I just
but if
mm,
it is only an hour, I think that like because we've already kind of got the setup of what the plot's going to be. It's this toy
mm,
makers somehow influencing the minds of humanity to go ape shit and destroy everything around them.
yeah,
That's all. That's the setup, and they've already done that. So now they can have the next episode have be more of a focus on the dynamic between the toy maker and the Doctor, which I think is going to be the interesting bit.
yeah. I think yeah, having a 90 minutes would be useful, just giving, more space for the story to breathe a little bit, because again, there's a lot that RTD has to accomplish. And as I said, I think he can just make it happen in an hour, but I would personally prefer the longer running time just to make it all sort of fit together.
We don't have long to wait.
Yeah, not long at all. It's
Yeah,
very exciting stuff.
and it won't be long after. It's what like maybe 3 weeks after this episode airs. We have a Christmas special to look forward to as well.
Yeah, man, that'll be really cool. Um, and I'm very excited for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
We might do an episode of the podcast in between where we look at maybe Runaway Bride or something
yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Who knows? We'll figure that out. But for now, you can look forward to the giggle next week as this 60th anniversary journey comes to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and my arms are too long, but that's not because I'm an alien infiltrator, that's just because I'm very lanky in general.
Hope that feels good, Cuff, because I'm short as shit.